Hey, Sheepdog Nation, to all of our amazing supporters out there, guess what? This is Podcast 1, coming to you from the Sheepdog National Office in Rogers, Arkansas. We're trying something new here, so bear with us a little bit with our very first official podcast, and you can tell, look at all these beautiful mics and the cameras and lights that we have is a testament to us trying to do this right. But the point is that through these podcasts, we would like to share a lot about what SDIA, what Sheepdog Impact Assistance is doing, what we've been up to, some of the things that we have planned for the future. But more importantly, we want to capture the stories of the men and women that are sheepdogs, the men and women that are out there on the front lines every day serving and protecting us. And so that may be active duty personnel that are quite literally serving in uniform, like our guest today, and or men and women that have served and have a powerful story to still share with all of us. So I hope you enjoy Podcast 1 for us and Sheepdog, and I hope you enjoy future podcasts to come as we share the mission of our men and women that are sheepdogs. So today we have Master Chief Steve Flemming with us. I've bounced this around a bit, Steve, on just kind of how to introduce you from the standpoint of we have a history, right? We have a history together of having served.
Couple commands.
Yes. My time in the Marine Corps for 30 years. And the Marine Corps being small as it is, as you know, Fleet Marine Corps and our brothers and sisters on the Navy side that serve with us, especially our corpsmen, right? We have a special relationship. And so the opportunity that I've had to serve with you, and I'm still shocked every time I say Master Chief, right? that Steve is a Master Chief, that he's a very young Master Chief at that. When I was always the old man in uniform, I'm so proud of you, so proud to have you with us here today.
Happy to be here.
Excited to be able to share your story and us share it with the men and women that are watching.
Absolutely. No, I'm happy to be here. I appreciate the invite. I'm excited to be part of episode 1.
Well, good. Well, it is. Every episode after this, men and women are going to be watching this to make sure they do it like Steve did, right? So that'll be the fun part. And I do apologize. I obviously have a face for radio, so for those of you that got to look at me, hey, so what? You're just going to have to deal with it. But I'm excited to be able to do this first podcast with you. And when we started talking about doing a podcast, your name immediately came to mind. One, based on the timing of what we've been doing together. And, we want to tell your story, and I want you to have a chance to tell the story on what it is that you're dealing with in your life today, some of the challenges that you're facing. You are still, you're active duty Navy in uniform, but unfortunately you're not serving in the capacity of your job today because of something personally you're having to battle.
Correct.
And so we're going to get to that. But right before we do, you know what? You and I experienced something pretty powerful a few weeks ago when we went to Africa and climbed a mountain that, to me, will forever be a curse word from a fun standpoint of just how challenging it was. But we climbed Mount Kilimanjaro together, and the journey of the 5 days of getting to that mountain, and that was pretty powerful, wasn't it?
Oh, it was absolutely. There's no way you can watch all the videos and the research and talk to people, but until you live it, you really don't know what you're stepping into. Yeah. It was awesome.
Well, and getting into your story, I think about how things came together for us to climb, right? Was you reaching out and just kind of updating me on what your status was in service and in life. And it was a little bit of a God thing, for me, because we were working hard to choose a team. Ultimately, there was 11 of us, right, that went to Africa to climb Kilimanjaro. I will say that everyone made it up to the top. which was pretty powerful to be able to say that we were one of the largest groups in years to make it to the top of the mountain. But, the power behind the day you called me was also a day where we had lost one of our participants who wasn't able to make it. And I thought, well, how am I going to fill this spot? And you called and you shared your story. And I was like, oh, my God, Steve, this is up to you, but it's an opportunity.
Yep.
And if you want it, it's yours. So I
remember that. I was in my driveway because I like to pace when I talk on the phone. And so, I got a repetition at that point of calling my circle of people, and I got to you, and I remember having to stop walking, and like you say Kilimanjaro, process that information, because who would expect that?
Yeah.
That was cool.
Especially if you've not been thinking about doing it, right? It's like, hey, I got a mountain I want to climb. It's the tallest mountain in Africa. And, well, if you will, share with the audience a little bit based on your journey as a combat veteran and how that led to your decision to agree to climb Kilimanjaro with us.
So, when I called you and you kind of offered up the idea, and you told me to take a couple days and think about it, because obviously there was a lot of emotional energy in that, and a lot of emotional energy to be able to talk to people about having cancer and the realization of how many things are going to be changing on top of still just embracing and processing this stuff just a few months in. And a big piece, I talked to my wife and having her be a sounding board of, are you up for it and everything. And what a big thing for me was, and we'll probably talk about it later too, is like a mental process for me was like at the rapid acceptance or aggressive acceptance of my new reality. And so I found that the faster I accepted what had happened to me, and the faster that I realized, okay, there's some things I can do, and I need to start making some changes, or I need to start getting back in the driver's seat. It became pretty clear to me, like I need to find something to dictate my circumstances and not let something else dictate what those walls or what, something might be. And so taking on something like that after talking to my wife and her being really encouraging and things, it really just came down to like, once I've aggressively accepted my new circumstances, okay, the next step is going to be, I'm now going to dictate what I can do. And so I just kind of jumped in. I live in Texas. It's pretty flat. Like I don't have mountains to go prep. So I was like, okay, like I'm accepting this challenge. And I think growing up in division, I didn't grow up in traditional Navy. I was raised militarily by combat veterans, from the invasion on. And I think that mindset and those mentors and those coaches and those, some of these giants that, when you're a junior Marine, junior sailor, you look up to some of these guys and they're on their third, fourth, fifth combat tour. And when they tell you something, you listen. And when like sometimes training hurts and like you follow through and you do that. And so when you live a life like that and you grow up in that culture, you just kind of jump in and that like sometimes, the pain is going to be worth it because you're going to have that reward on the backside. So I just kind of jumped in and was like, okay, we're going to climb Kilimanjaro. I don't know how. I don't even know what we need. I don't even have civilian gear for this. I got a bunch of Marine Corps gear, but I was like, we're going to figure it out and we're going to climb a mountain. So this was the first non-military high adventure thing I've taken on. And so it was my way of jumping in the deep end and demanding that I still get to drive my life and not let cancer drive it.
Absolutely. Well, and on that note, you've heard everyone that, and we're going to talk a little bit more about Steve's battle, but it is cancer.
Yep.
And, that is something that for so many people out there that have had loved ones have to battle it. And we're going to get into the story of really what has caused your cancer, right? Which is going to be pretty powerful in itself as we share that story and remind people of the battles that our men and women are still facing out there. But, as I look back on, one, your acceptance to go up Kilimanjaro, and, for myself and the whole team, I think all of us were facing those personal challenges of, oh my gosh, what's this going to be like? Can we do it, right? Because we hear the stories of not everyone makes it, and some of the best world-class athletes that attempt it never make it to the top. And so it's not about really how good a shape you're in. It's more about whether the mountain is going to allow you to make it, right? And so I think back on the challenges of the daily, miles that we had to put under our feet as we walked to and up the mountain. But I could sit here all day long and talk about how challenging it was for me in different ways. But for you, what do you think was the most challenging aspect of the climbing itself, up to the day that we went to the top, but at the same time, just taking into that portion as well?
Summit night, of course, is going to be when we get into actually once we're on the trail and we're going. The summit night is the hardest, in my opinion, whether it be the going up and or the coming down. God help us.
Yeah, right.
So, to explain it to everyone that doesn't know is, you're stepping off at midnight and you're stepping off into just pure darkness and you're at like a 45-degree grade. And, the thing that tore me up was you take a step and you slide down 6 inches. I mean, that loose gravel and dirt and everything. And just, you have to dig for every inch on the way up, and your thin air and everything else. But when mentally, and I learned this from retired gunnery sergeant Pat Coleman, who he called it training, but he gave me a lot of love. And we were really big into McMap and doing lots of stuff. But I did a lot of things when he was my company gunny with him, and you hit certain points in training, whether it be workups or schools or just unit cohesion training. And I learned back as an E4, E5, like when you're 1, 2, 3 weeks into something and you're at that summit night for whatever that event is, you're really, really tired. You can't breathe. Everything hurts, your joints, your muscles, what have you. And you start feeling like you want to quit. I learned from Gunny Coleman, like the pain of like all this stuff that we had already done would be for nothing if you quit right now.
Yeah.
He's like, or you can just suck it up and just go and do your piece. And so I was like, okay, well, like all the other stuff wasn't for nothing. Like I'm just going to get there. So that's kind of the mentality that I've carried for 10, 15 years ever since I met him, and the training that he shared with me. And so I think that was the hardest thing, was just I had pains and things that everyone else had, but for me it was, I didn't go through all that just to not make the top, and compounded with wanting to be in the driver's seat. Mm-hmm. And so when we got to Gilman's Point, and you start moving the crest, once you're really up that grade and you're doing the rim, you start seeing the signs and you see the peak and the sign at the peak. I made the decision. I'm like, okay, I'm going to trudge there. And I'm going to pass out. I was like, I'm going to pass out. I'm going to pass out at the sign, but it's okay. My body will be there, and everyone will know.
We'll drag you
Everyone
down
will know I've made it. It's okay. And so, like, that was just kind of the gut-wrenching reality. I mean, the summit night was a monster.
It was brutal.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you do this, but for those out there that aren't aware, English is a predominant language in Tanzania, along with all their different tribal languages. But the main one is Swahili, and so there's the Swahili words for certain things that we do. But the big ones that the big one that the guides drove in was pole pole, and they were constantly saying pole pole, which means slow. Go slow. Take your time. This is not a sprint, right? It truly is a marathon. But there's times when I wake up in the middle of the night and my brain is saying pole pole.
Yep.
Because that summit night, all I kept saying to myself was pole pole.
Yep.
Or else I knew we wouldn't make it. But also at the same time, to your point of the training that we've been through, the experiences.
Yep.
For me, throughout my career, anytime I faced adversity, it was always reminding myself that nothing lasts forever.
Yep.
Now, that's not a good feeling when there's good things in your life,
sure.
right? But when there's pain, whenever there were trying times, especially in my life in the military, I always would stress, nothing lasts forever. I mean, this pain is not going to last forever. And if you can endure it and make it across the finish line, you're going to be so happy that you did it. And you may say, I never want to do it again, which I'm saying now about Kilimanjaro, right? But it is powerful to know that experiences like that and having someone like the Gunny kind of impress that upon you makes a difference in the things that we do in life.
And you don't even realize it at the moment. Like you realize this, the next challenge or the next thing, or as you get older, or when you have, we've promoted, you're retired sergeant major and things like you look back at, some of these kids that, you've professionally raised and you see them making the mistakes or saying the things or being like, oh, I used to think like that, and like you see, and it's funny how these life lessons, you don't realize what you're getting along the way and what people can impart on you. It's really cool when you look back.
Without a doubt. Well, on that note, we're going to take a quick break. We'll come back and we're going to hear more of Steve's story, and we're going to start to really get into the discussion of, as you've heard, he's fighting cancer. And I want everyone out there to learn a little bit more about the battle he's facing, the why, what has really kind of led to that, and how all of us need to be aware of and not forget the men and women that have done so much to serve us and our great nation. We'll be right back.
It doesn't matter how long you know that you're getting out for. Even if you come in and you do 4 years and that's your plan the whole time. I'm gonna do 4 and I'm gonna get out and I'm gonna go do this. It's still hard to leave those people who understand you.
They have totally changed my life, transformed me into who I used to be and to who I am now.
The best way for us to work through our problems is to work through our problems together.
I got off the couch, got out of that dark place. I got put on an adventure. I wanted to make veterans feel the way that I felt on that adventure.
And Sheepdog was able to bring us out here and be able to honor him and his family.
Because we, as sheepdogs, have a very different mentality and habits and the way that we speak, and we don't necessarily click with everyone. And so when Sheepdog is there and they're like, hey, come have fun with us, they're helping you without you necessarily saying, help me.
So these kinds of events, people not only get to feel refreshed when they get to go out, but imagine if that was your life.
We're set here when our potential's way up here. It was like a reset, a recalibration.
I mean, this is really for anyone who needs a family and it needs a reason to just get off the couch.
And this is honestly the best thing that's happened to me since the Marine Corps, and I couldn't be more grateful.
All right, we're back. Hey, we're here today with Master Chief Steve Flemming, and we're talking about a little bit of his life and the adventures that we've experienced recently as we climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, and then we're going to talk a little bit about his battle with cancer today. So, but before we transition to that, Steve, I want to go back to Kilimanjaro one more time. It's sometimes we get caught up in the pain is sometimes what we remember the most from a fondness, because we can sit around and joke about it. I always think about the gas chamber at boot camp and how miserable that experience was. But at the same time, we look back on it with fondness based on just, what it meant, to become that Marine, but or someone, finishing boot camp. How about the experiences that we had together in Kilimanjaro, and what were some of the most memorable from a fondness standpoint that you'll be able to look back on that isn't painful, that you really appreciate from that experience?
There was 11 of us, right? And I think we didn't get to spend a lot of time together because geographically we were all spread out across the country, and we had a group chat. We got to meet here at the ranch a couple months beforehand, but essentially we all stepped off on the trail as strangers, and I look at the small snapshots, right? And I think of the phrase, the best of times is the worst of times, and like you remember all like the gut-wrenching things like you mentioned, right? Whether it be military training, whether it be summit night, but it's the in-between, the small moments that like at that moment don't really mean something. It's just we're sitting down and we're talking and we're laughing and things. But I think of like watching, being a part of like a card game and like seeing Jose just like burst out laughing and like, everyone starts to kind of gel, and like you really start feeling that team dynamic, and everyone's firing on all cylinders with joy and is happy to be there, and everyone's feeling the same. Everyone's sore, everyone's tired, but I think seeing everybody come together in like the middle of nowhere. You look for miles, you can see we're above the clouds, and like you can see forever, and it's windy and it's cold, and we're eating food in the middle, 12,000, 15,000 feet. And I think of like all those little moments along the trek, Zebra Rock, and us all, taking that off the beaten path up there and getting to see what we're going to conquer. And, everyone being, really starting to get amped up that we're so close to taking that on. And I really, I was scrolling through photos and things once everyone dumped everything and we all shared all of our photos, and I was just cruising through and looking through them and stuff. And it's those kinds of things that tie to those memories. Or I remember a conversation, we were making stupid jokes on that rock while somebody was changing their socks, or fighting over who's going to get the last what flavor lifesaver. Right. Just dumb little things in the moment, but like you think back and you're like, that was awesome. Yeah. And I loved that.
Well, and I think you touch on it. It's the camaraderie, right?
Yep.
It's going through that with people that you enjoy. And we do. We all come from different backgrounds. I think almost every branch of service was there. And, from that standpoint, it's our experiences in life, whether it's geographically from all of us coming from different parts of the country, to our different stories and how we've served and where we've been and what we've done. we all came together, and we've got something that we'll always share.
Yep.
An experience that, so few people actually have the opportunity to experience and accomplish. But those little things. I think about sitting down, and our porters and our guides would have meals prepared for us.
Yep.
And the thing I looked forward to the most was that hot cocoa. They'd have hot water for us, and just to put some cocoa in my hot water, and just that's a little bit of home, right? As funny as it was, it really kind of makes a difference.
And the soups. I didn't have a bad soup. That really surprised me.
I mean, I keep thinking about, when there comes to negative, it's really just the walking aspect, and especially the summit night, right? It's that poly. I never want to hear it again, and my brain keeps throwing it out there at me. But yeah, it's everything about the experience really was powerful, and there's so many different things that we can reflect back on that make us appreciate every aspect of the journey, the easy and the hard. But again, it comes back to the fact that we did it together, and all of us have that experience, and that bond will always be there.
Yep. That was the first trip or first thing I've ever done where I actually journaled every day. And I got a book and journaled the entire experience to try to capture it and really want to make the most of it. And I'm going to go in and put photos in it and do some captions. And that's something that, I hope like my kids can go and like know exactly my feelings on, a certain day and stuff. And I really wanted to make it special once we got going. And I'm really glad I did that.
That's powerful. Now you're making me sit here and go, I wish I had journaled, but I was too busy just focusing on putting one foot in front of the other. This is where we kind of transition a little bit into a topic that's not necessarily fun. As we talk about your current challenges as you fight cancer, but there's a couple reasons we timed our podcast when we did, and a big part of it is because we're going to release this on 9/11.
Okay.
It's going to be the 22nd anniversary of September 11th, right? And so many things go through my mind when I think about that date. For me personally, I'd gotten out of the military. I was out of the Marine Corps, had been out almost a year plus. And 9/11 happens, and then begins my new journey of getting back into the Marine Corps, right? And for so many men and women that have served and fought and died for our nation since then, that date was the reason why. It was our generation's Pearl Harbor, right? It was our generation's reason to fight for their country after we'd been attacked, right? And as we go into the conversation about your cancer, we have to stop and pause and think, okay, 9/11 happens, and the people that die that day and are part of that moment in time, that whether it was people that were running away from the buildings as they fell, or the men and women that were running into the buildings, what we refer to as sheepdogs. What type of man or woman runs into a burning building, or a skyscraper that just got hit by airplanes? Who's crazy enough to do that? Well, it's sheepdogs, right? It's men and women that are willing to serve and, if need be, die for us. And so as I think about that, it's then the first responders that answered the call that day when the buildings were hit, but also all the men and women that served at Ground Zero for days and weeks after that, trying to recover our fellow Americans. And so the challenge as we connect with your experience now with cancer is the illnesses that occurred because of Ground Zero after the buildings had fallen, and the illnesses and the cancers and so many other debilitating illnesses that have broken people, that have ultimately caused their lives to come to an end. And you then kind of fast forward to today and you think, okay, well, we're 22 years past that. Well, A lot of those men and women that serve there at Ground Zero are still suffering from the illnesses the exposure to those toxins have caused. But we in uniform, then when we go overseas and serve in a combat zone, we are worried about bombs and bullets, but we're not really worried about the unseen dangers that we're facing and don't even realize it. And whether it was Agent Orange going all the way back to Vietnam, which was, mine and your father's generation, and some, areas our uncles and aunts. And I think about how, okay, that was so impactful on our veterans and the side effects of dropping Agent Orange. And then you go up to Desert Shield, Desert Storm, where I served my first tour as a young Marine. And we come home and we're learning about the effects of the burn pits in Saudi Arabia and in the Gulf there. And it's one of those things where I'm like, okay, did we learn our lesson? And noting that burn pits can cause a lot of harm, the toxins that come from them. Then you fast forward to today, and the call that you made to me and letting me know that you had cancer and that it's connected to burn pits in Afghanistan. And I'm sitting here going, my service in Iraq, your service, and a lot of the same dirt that we've chewed together. And I'm looking back going, my gosh, there were burn pits all over the place.
Yeah.
Again. And I'm sitting there, even as I look back and go, it just became common that we just didn't give it a second thought. And even though I knew the dangers of the burn pits from my time during Desert Shield, Desert Storm, for whatever reason, I still didn't think about the continued harm in seeing burn pits in Iraq and Afghanistan. So I say that to then go, for me, it has come home hard because of mine and your friendship, and noting that a friend of mine now has cancer because of burn pits. And so I want everyone hopefully out there to appreciate, you take that evolution from Agent Orange to Desert Shield, Desert Storm to Ground Zero, and then the war on terrorism and burn pits still. There are so many of our servicemen and women out there and our first responders that are suffering from the toxins in the air based on their service. And again, they may be worried about a burning building or shots being fired or bombs falling, but you don't think that, hey, the air is going to kill me that I'm serving in, right? And
Sure.
So tell us a little bit about that, if you will, and your exposure and then how that's impacting your life today.
So I 2011, I was working at a patrol base Alcatraz in Sangin, Afghanistan, and we were in an environment of contact 7 days a week. The valley was hostile on every patrol, no matter what FOB or patrol base you were operating out of. In 2010, 2011, Sangin was the place to be for the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
And we had a burn pit, and since my diagnosis, I've learned about a lot of guys that were there, and I think kind of touching on some of the points that you made. When we look at Agent Orange, we look at Desert Storm. This stuff's it's in my family. Agent Orange was what ultimately killed my grandfather, who did 3 tours in Vietnam. My uncle, who is retired, has complications from Desert Storm, Desert Shield, associated with toxins, and then me. And so, as you can imagine, this has been very hard on my dad. It's on his side, so his brother and his father, and I think so.
And now his son.
And now his son. And so, for my dad, who grew up a military brat, and is very proud of me being in the service and everything, I think it was a little hard on him to process and accept that. And so for me, I don't regret. I have no regrets of my service. I don't regret. You get asked would you go back to Afghanistan if you could go back in time? And I'm like, Yeah, I would, because I
Serve
know
with my brothers and sisters.
I was on the line doing the job as a corpsman. Like, I treated guys that are alive today. I lost friends that I did everything I could, and I wouldn't have been there for that final moment with them, kind of thing. And like, there's so much more, as you know, with deployments than just this. And when I think of how we are here today and how we're learning about the realities of toxic exposure events and things impacting the post 9/11 generation, I think it's easy to kind of jump to some frustration or anger, and I think it's fair to feel frustrated. I was frustrated and this isn't my first time getting sick, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But I think we looked at post-traumatic stress, and I think it's fair to say we're not perfect, and where we're all the programs and the stigma, that's the big thing, right? I think we've come a long way as a nation outside of military service and how we view post-traumatic stress, and we put such a focus on killing the stigma, and now employers, I feel like it's safe to say most employers are not afraid to hire a veteran, and where as the war was going on, you'd hear the stigma of like, oh, what if they freak out in the office and things, and I think that we focused so much on that. Yeah, I think we probably missed a few things we could have caught earlier and made better decisions. And so now I think in what some of the legislation that has been done, I think we're making steps in the right direction. I think with the tests and some of the research out there, I think we're learning a lot, and we can talk about these different things and organizations that are out there to help veterans and some of the latest and really cool, exciting things happening. But I kind of think I don't regret anything. That's the big thing, and I had to really think about that because it was easy for me to get real angry, and I'm really proud of my service. I'm proud of doing what I did. I've been to a lot of countries in the Middle East, and what I have learned since I got sick was that there is a group of us. It is not just me. It is not just me and one guy. And so even 5 years ago, I started coming to light. 5 years ago, same month, I got diagnosed with cancer Friday the 13th. January 13th, 2023, they found the tumor, and that started all the tests, which led to the diagnosis. However, January 2018, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, and I had what I know now is I had had multiple symptoms over a couple years, and I didn't associate it with that. And so going back to that, I found 3 other Marines that had MS, that have MS, that were with me time-wise over patrol base Alcatraz. And so that one of them I talk to almost on a daily basis. The other ones I kind of track, and we're a support group for each other. And then since the cancer, I've discovered I'm the only one with both. I'm special, but I've discovered a group of Marines and service members that are having different fights with different bouts of cancer,
different health issues on the extreme level. Now, how do you right now the Navy is being really good to you. They're keeping you on active duty. You have commented before that you're really proud, and I am too, to hear it, that the service is doing you right,
100%,
and putting you in a position where you're able to be at home with your family. You're getting. How do you feel about the care that you're receiving overall? Yeah,
the Navy has been, and the Marine Corps. I was working for a Marine Corps command when I got diagnosed. I was working for a 2-star now retired, or I think he's on terminal leave, Major General Paul Rock. And I couldn't be more grateful for his leadership and support. So as soon as I got diagnosed, he immediately started, got a colonel assigned to take care of all the admin piece and to work with the Navy so I could focus on me, and between Big Navy and Major General Paul Rock and his leadership team, they worked out all the admin in under a week and got me home. And so the Navy has kept me, retained me on active duty. I'm in the Navy Reserves, and was recalled for a deployment when this happened. And so the Navy I couldn't be more grateful. So I'm at home with my family, huge support network. And so as I go through my stuff, I'm getting cancer treatment at MD Anderson in Houston.
That's a top-notch facility.
Top-notch. And so I'm getting poked and prodded and tested and scanned and, all sorts of things. But I'm getting answers. I'm getting, status updates, and I'm able to, I don't question or second guess the clinical competencies. And then I already 5 years of MS care. I've already got a routine. And so the new challenge isn't, do I have competent or appropriate medical care, or am I worried about, some cancer, right, is such a scary thing, not just from like the health dynamic. I mean, when you look at the financial and the insurance and, all those like the administrative components and financial components that come with that, I'm very blessed with, to be retained and not have to stress about that component, and I can focus on my wellness. So my energy goes into, how do I balance these two monsters, essentially, that, live and like continue living my life, for my wife, for my daughters, for my brothers or sisters that are maybe hurting, and maybe be a positive influence for them and try to find that. And so that's where I'm able to put my energy, because the Navy has been so good to me.
Good. Well, and I think at the end of the day, that's what most people want to know is, are you being treated properly? And it sounds like you are, and you're getting the treatment you need. On that note, though, and part of why we're doing this podcast, and I wanted you to be here, was to bring awareness to the fact that, to your point, as you've reached out and you've found more of the men that you've served with that are now dealing with some of the same things. To your point, maybe not both diseases, but they're suffering. And am I correct in saying there's been a couple that have died already?
One Marine died last year in an organization called Hunter 7 Foundation. They are a nonprofit based out of Rhode Island. They specialize in it's a group of clinicians and health-based scientists that specialize in research around toxic exposure in veterans, and Hunter 7 being the call sign of the husband of one of the founders who passed away. And so I reached out to them and told them about me. And when I mentioned, they were like, where did you serve? And, I talked about the different countries in the Middle East. I bounced around, but they were like, when I lived in very near immediate proximity of a burn pit, I was at Patrol Base Alcatraz. And she said, I am well aware of Patrol Base Alcatraz. Wow. So I was like, okay. So she's like, I have data. I've got reports of known toxic exposure things. Like, I've got stuff. And so the way that they collect that is a service member can voluntarily open up their medical information to them for research purposes. And what they started doing was compiling data to try to find trends. Yeah. And so a Marine passed away last year of cancer who was at Alcatraz the same time I was. And so it wasn't the exact same, but it's in the ballpark. It's a similar type of cancer. And And so I was able to kind of then start, that really got the ball rolling where I was like, I need to start talking to some of my guys. And I started calling in, like even calling around. I called a couple guys that I knew were in remission. And around the same kind of making my rounds. That was when I started, okay, I'm going to start opening up. And, I called you, started calling people, and I started to become more public with it. When calling around, I found guys that admitted to me that they were sick and didn't tell anybody. And they were like, I've never told anybody. I've just been in the dark, like suffering. Goodness. And I found a guy who was like, I just went to get tested. I'm waiting on some results. And he has since found out he's sick. Yeah. And so it's the realization of like talking about it actually might be good, not just for me, but probably for the community.
Yeah. Well, and it's that continued, effort on your part. And there, it is. It's so hard sometimes to say, blessings and curses, right? But the silver lining of things sometimes that are bad that happen to us, having it happen to someone like you is not good. I hate it. But at the same time, I hear stories like that where you are the type of person who's going to reach out. You're the type of person who isn't staying quiet. And because of your willingness to reach out to others and share and check, do the buddy check that is so important, you are helping others to, one, realize they need to get checked themselves and or appreciate the importance of, hey, if you don't take care of yourself now and you don't get ahead of this, it quite literally is going to kill you. And so, as we talk about awareness, and that being a big part of why I wanted to have you on here today, is to bring it to the attention of people and remind them of what's happening. But also, so how are some other ways right now that are there any other organizations or things that you're doing to help kind of bring awareness to the subject at hand, and anything that others can be doing, and or if you're speaking to a group of veterans and or first responders out there, is there anything that you'd like to say to them to kind of encourage the importance of awareness behind everything that we do?
No, I mean, as you know, we climbed with Sheepdog, we climbed Kili, and that was awesome. It's opened up this forum and everything. Hunter 7 Foundation they offered up, hey, we'll do some cancer screening blood work if you've got a group of guys that were with you that are willing to do this. We'll pay for it. So I got several guys with some health issues plugged in, and Hunter 7 started doing blood work on them and started trying to figure out, hey, are there any enzymes and any imbalances in their systems, and trying to find trend data of people that meet the criteria for high risk, multiple deployments, or co-located with me at Alcatraz and things. And so they've been fantastic. Team Rubicon was a big. I had a lot of outreach from the leadership there that I've got close personal relationships with. The Navy has been my hobby forever. So like I need, it was a job and everything, but I genuinely loved being in the Navy. And the reality is that's coming to a close. So the Wounded Warrior Project and Navy Wounded Warrior has been working with me in terms of finding hobbies and like exploring things, and I'm trying to tie that into my kids and stuff. So those organizations have been fantastic. And
now, did I tell you we need a Sheepdog chapter down in Houston?
Yeah.
So I'm speaking of hobbies.
I'm trying to figure out, like, I don't know what hobby Steve Flemming likes yet, but I'm kind of just going with whatever my kids have interest in, and exploring that and seeing if I can have a hobby with each kid. But in terms of reaching out, or in terms of advice, or if I'm speaking to a group of vets and first responders, so I know we'll talk about at the end about like kind of future stuff and ideas and things that I'm working on, but like a concept towards one of my future things that I'm working on is what I call team room medicine. And team room medicine came from a lot of conversations with some guys. There's an active duty guy, Army. His name's Vince, and he and I went and met at a Operation Healing Forces event that was put on, and that came like right after I got diagnosed. That I got set up with them as a way for my wife and I to kind of connect and process our stuff. And so I had some really good talks with him, sharing my thoughts, and we had identified some of the same trends, and it's that guys hurting in the dark, right? Yeah. And I think we talk about post-traumatic stress, and I think a big popular thing to highlight's the 22 a day and things. But I think, in my opinion, I think we're looking at that through a lens, or we're not opening the aperture enough. And I think the 22 a day is terrible and it's significant. But I don't think the 22 a day and post-traumatic stress, because that's usually a lot of what we hear is that, oh, you're struggling and you let the demons and all these things and you're hurting, and then something tragic happens. I think if we opened up that aperture and we looked at it from what I call team room medicine, and team room medicine is more than Band-Aids, it's more than pills, it's more than creams and ointments. Mm-hmm. Team room medicine is when we were all in the team room or something and we're looking at our guys, we can tell if something's off. We're having those interactions with them. We are deeply connected and invested in each other, and like there's that really good team cohesion. There's that competitive nature that happens in that team room as well, like who's the best shooter, who's the fastest runner, who's swimming more, who's lifting more weight, whatever it is, right? And different teams vary based on communities, but you're pushing each other and everything else. Specifically with military, I think something that should be talked about more is the transition to civilian life, where we tell them you're not going to have that team room medicine kind of component. So rule number one in a small unit team, when you're in a combat theater and stuff, is you don't do anything to compromise the team. Don't do anything to compromise yourself. Take care of yourself. Stay healthy. Stay fit. Like, keep your mind in the game. Same thing in training. So all of a sudden, like, there's those moments where it's like we're climbing the mountain. And if we're in Bridgeport, we're doing like a combat load up the mountain. Like, no one wants to hear you complain. Like, suck it up. Like, we're all carrying extra batteries. We're all carrying extra food or extra ammo. Like, just gut it out, get to the top. Like, those are the moments where it's like no one wants to hear that. We never take that off, in my opinion. We don't take that off of our service members very well. So we get these type A, highly competitive and aggressive individuals who have been doing the job, and whether they're retiring or whether they're separating, I don't think we're doing as good of a job addressing the idea that you need to learn to speak out. You need to talk. Hey, I'm hurting. Yeah. Hey, I'm not doing well. And I think like when you get into that 22 a day, the argument isn't that's not a real or that's not a problem. I think my argument is, okay, like that's a result. And yeah, maybe the root cause, is through post-traumatic stress. However, like when we open up that aperture, the question was, did we ever take that idea of don't put anything on the team? Mm-hmm. Don't bitch, gripe, or moan. Like, did we take that off of them and put the idea of you're not in the team room anymore? No one's going to see you. And I think that's something worth exploring. And I think it goes to small unit leadership. And I think we need to start getting that infection spreading. And that results in a challenge. And that goes to anybody watching this, and maybe it'll get it shared more. My challenge is what I call intrusive wellness checks. So the guys on the other end that, you lose your teammate and you lose your friend and it's tragic and you're really upset and you're like, I wish I had called that guy or something. When I was calling around, a Marine that I served with told me about another Marine that we served with, and he said, I think he might be sick. He had something going on, but he didn't want to go and get it checked. So I start, where is he now? What's he doing? I didn't stay in touch with this particular other Marine. Did he go get it tested? What's going on with him and this and that? And like the response I got from this guy was, well, I didn't want to pry. And so that struck a chord with me and really got my gears turning. And I'm like, you have to pry. It's not about like forcing.
Yeah.
Like they're going to offer up what they offer up, but we need to be intrusive enough where like, you don't want to share today. That's cool. But like, I want you to know you're on my radar.
Yeah.
I want you to know that I give a damn about you. I want you to know that you don't have, even if you don't answer the phone, I'm still going to text you. Whatever it is, like we need to be deliberate. And I think doing those intrusive wellness checks is another thing because, in my opinion, I think we have come so far as a sheepdog community, right? Especially with the military, in terms of the transition. There's so many fantastic job programs, and you look at these foundations that do like the LinkedIn coaching and how to network in the civilian world and translate your military term. What is a company gunny? Well, like, you're applying for a manager job. The guy didn't serve. That doesn't mean anything to him.
Senior supervisor.
Boom. Like he's able to, we have so many fantastic things out there now and people and organizations to help with that. And I think if we started changing that dynamic, I think that might open up the aperture and maybe some of the guys hurting in the dark may find the light switch. They may find that they're not alone in that dark room, and maybe we can start pulling some dudes into a bigger room together.
Absolutely. Well, and on that note, we're going to take a quick little break, and we're going to come back and wrap up our first ever podcast. But there's so many things and rabbit holes we can go down in that. But I'm going to challenge you because you said quite a few things there that we talk about heavily in Warrior Path. And I know you're familiar with what we're doing, and we talk about, as you're referring, not in the team room anymore, we talk about the importance of taking your armor off, right? It's just that when you leave the military, they spend so much money, and even in the first responder community, so much money is pumped into turning us into a warfighter, a first responder, whether it's a firefighter, a police officer, whatever that might be. But then when we have to transition out of that role, when we're no longer in the military, the amount of time and money that was spent turning us into that is not reciprocated in turning us not into that any longer, right? Turning us back into a healthy, productive civilian, right? Yep. We're locked into still being locked in the team room, yep. Right? And the other one is, we weren't told how to take our armor off. All this armor and training was put on us, but then nobody told us how to take it off. So we'll come back, maybe talk about that just a little bit, but I'm going to challenge you now to go to Warrior Path with us because you're such a powerful advocate. And
February.
If you can, you got February.
I'm signed up.
Are you
February.
really? Look
I'm going
at that.
in February.
Hey, I did my job. It happened like that. So I love that because you're such a powerful speaker from the standpoint of really getting down to the nuts and bolts of what's going on out there. It's going to make a difference. And I do want to, say, and you mentioned Team Rubicon, that, a shout out to everybody out there with Team Rubicon. One, because I appreciate what you've done with them. You've served with Team Rubicon for quite a while. We've had some relationships as an organization with Sheepdog, helping out in communities in disaster, and Team Rubicon, and so proud of the work that we've both been able to do together when it comes to our organizations getting these men and women up off the couch, serving again, and or doing the things they need to do to take better care of themselves. So with that, hey, we'll be back in just a few minutes. We're going to close out this first ever podcast with Sheepdog Impact Assistance. I am Sergeant Major Lance Nutt, United States Marine Corps retired, and I am so thankful for you taking the time to listen to today's podcast. We'll be right back.
Because for today, we begin writing a new story. Not a story of deep trauma, a story of strength. Story of being you again. Make that choice. Today, you too can help.
All right, hey, we are back with, as we've liked to, I think we've said a few times now, or I have, that proud to say that this is our first Sheepdog Impact Assistance, first official podcast. I think we've dabbled with it a little bit in the past. And so for all of you out there that have watched today, thank you. And I'm going to do a few closing remarks before I hand it over to Steve to kind of really take us home and share what he's going to be doing for the foreseeable future. But I hope that today is a reminder of what it is that our men and women do, and the sacrifices and the harm that they put themselves in unknowingly a lot of times, unfortunately. And again, as we've talked about this being the anniversary, 22 years, goodness, 22nd anniversary of 9/11. And we've talked about the damaging effects of those that worked and served at Ground Zero, all the way back to Agent Orange during Vietnam, and again, these silent killers, Desert Shield, Desert Storm, and the burn pits, and then obviously here with Steve, Master Sergeant Steve Flemming, and Master Chief. Look at me there. Did I say Master Sergeant?
Yes.
I'll tell you what. It's because I know that if he was serving in the Marine Corps, that's what he'd be today. But we'll let him be a Master Chief in the United States Navy. But have a little fun there with that. But I think that for me, as I personally have heard Steve's story and everything has really kind of come home, it's a reminder of how we as a nation must not forget what our men and women, our sheepdogs, what they do for us on a daily basis and how they've served. And that we as a nation, that we as a people of this nation must do a better job ensuring that we're doing the best for the best among us. And the best among us are our men and women out there that serve every day and who have served. And so, Steve, thank you for being here today. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your friendship, and thank you for your willingness to open up. As you talked about, it's so important that our sheepdogs out there, that they don't shut down, that they appreciate that they are not in the team room anymore, and it's okay to take their armor off and to open up about the things they're struggling with.
Get off the couch.
Get off that damn couch. And that's where a lot of times it begins, right? Because if you isolate and you sit on that couch and you're not out there reconnecting with new people and old people, right? It's just you're not out there connecting with people, period. You don't have a chance to tell your story. And, you know, in Sheepdog, through our Warrior Path program, we talk a lot about the importance and the value in your story. No matter how common or mundane it may be to you, there's so many people out there that are amazed by the things that our men and women do in uniform. And so they all have powerful stories to tell. And you have shared a powerful story with us today. And I can't say thank you enough, again, for your willingness to be part of telling it today. And so with that, I'd like for you to kind of close us out today by telling us a little bit of what the future holds for you.
Sure.
And what you plan on doing and what's going to be keeping you busy, but also how can our audience out there follow your story and follow more of what you'll be doing as you continue to share, you continue to fight, which is what's important to me, and that you represent and remind others about the importance of that battle.
Let me say thank you. I'm so grateful that, you know, for the invite and the opportunity to come share and expand the audience that I can maybe kind of share my stuff with. So I really appreciate that and your friendship and service as well. I got busy year. My wife actually made a joke about it the other day, and she's like, you know, he's supposed to be at home, like doing things. And someone was like, "Oh, is Steve free this day?" And she's like, "I'm gonna be honest, I don't know." Like he's always like researching things, going places, meeting organizations and people. And so I have been talking to Navy Wounded Warrior, who's been my advocacy group and program, obviously going through this along with other service members that are injured and ill. And so I have officially applied for a training camp for the DoD Warrior Games. So I'm hoping to be a competitor next June and get to just train and compete with some awesome people, you know, service members from every branch come together, and I've watched those, and I'm hoping I'll now be able to partake in that. So that'll be streamed on social media on the DoD Warrior Games and all the Wounded Warrior programs. Warrior Path, which we talked about, I have applied, interviewed, gone through the process along with a couple people from our Kili climb. So
good.
We're gonna go through and do some personal growth and exploration. I'm excited to draw from other people's experiences. I like that take your armor off. So maybe get some cool insights to apply that to my situation and hopefully meet some awesome people along the way. And then, so a couple things. I'm exploring writing. It's not going great yet. I got a really,
I've been there.
a really good outline. So I've been several pages where I'm bullets, sub-bullets, and so on, and I'm really spitting out these ideas, some of which we talked about, the team room and the intrusive wellness checks and things, and I've got lots of other kind of things that I'm building out. So my wife has challenged me. Originally, it was going to be something I submitted a couple times and did maybe some online articles. She's kind of challenged me, why don't you keep writing it out and playing with it, and maybe it's more. And so if I do have enough, then I might try to take on the challenge of turning this into a book to kind of address expansions on those ideas around positive mental attitude and how to overcome the challenges around whether it be health or whether it be mental health, physical health, something like that, best practices, lessons learned and research and things. And so I'm kind of playing with that. If it takes me a bit, don't judge me. And then lastly, I have a page on Facebook. I don't have an Instagram or anything right now, but Facebook, it's Steve's Fight with MS and Cancer. And so the intent's going to be sharing research, sharing information and resources. There's enough negativity out there. There's enough sadness and things. And so what I want it to be is a resource, not just for veterans, or not just for first responders, but also if there's loved ones that need, hey, my husband or my wife's and she, they're in the team room. They're alone in the dark and I can't connect. Like maybe I'm hoping the idea is like I can share information and resources and positive kind of stuff and give updates on my own struggles. And I'll tell you that I go off a mantra. Right? That was something early on when I talked a little bit about rapid or aggressive acceptance. Part of my stuff was I needed to figure out a mantra that would get me going every day, even if it was just a little bit. I'm not going to sit in the bedroom all day, like even if it's just a little bit. And so I had a sergeant major that I served with. He would always say, I don't have bad days. And that really got me thinking, and I kind of liked the idea of it. And so I took a play on that. And so one of my mantras taking this on was, I'm not going to have bad days, but I'll probably have bad moments. Bad moments are okay, because moments, like you said, the pain is going to pass, or that discomfort. So I'm okay with bad moments, but I'm not going to let it have a bad day. And I've got a couple other mantras and things that, I try to build off of. And so that's kind of where the kind of tone or the attitude I want to bring to this and connect to people that need help. So on Facebook, Steve's fight with MS and cancer. And the last thing I want to just kind of leave with everyone is Nick Lavery. Are you familiar with him?
I'm familiar with the name.
He's a amputee, high amputee. He's one of the only ones serving on active duty still. He's Army Special Forces.
Yep.
He wrote the book. He's from Boston. I watched an interview with him, and it was pretty soon after I got diagnosed, and I loved it. And I had to write it down, and I had it written down in my notebook that I use for everything. And there is positivity to extract from the worst of situations. And I love that. Yeah. I love that, because especially coming from a guy like him, like if you watch his stuff and the way that he has conducted himself since his injury and the things that he's accomplished. And so that really drew a lot of inspiration. I even wrote him to kind of tell him that. And that quote, I wrote it down. I keep it in my notebook. And so even when somebody, if it's you, if it's someone if it's your loved one, there's something positive in that dark moment or in that, that dark room. You just got to find it. And so don't give up, and really appreciate you bringing me here. Absolutely. Well, we couldn't finish on a brighter note. You're right. You cannot allow the darkness to consume you, and there's no such thing as a bad day. We can have bad moments. Yep. But we can't allow it to define our days. Exactly. Right? So I love that. So thank you again, Steve. And I couldn't ask for a better way for us to start what I hope to be a very powerful series of podcasts on our end as we share other stories about such amazing men and women out there like yourself that have done great things for this nation. Thank you for telling your story, and with that, hey, we'll look back. We look forward to us coming back with our future podcasts, and this first one, so happy with, and the connection with you, my friend, has made this very special. So hey, on that note, Sheepdog Impact Assistance thanks you for listening to this podcast, and we'll see you all again, hopefully in the very near future. And as always, if there's anything that we can do for you, if you are a sheepdog, go to our website at www.sheepdogia.org. Check out our outdoor adventure programs, our Warrior Path program, and also the opportunity to serve with us during natural disasters with our disaster response teams. On that note, thank you. God bless all of you, and thank you for the opportunity to share.